Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Strategic Planning Committee. Time is 2 o'clock, so we'll start with item 1, apologies for absence and notification of substitute members. Could I ask Democratic Services Officer whether any apologies for absence have been received, please?
Through you, Chair, apologies have been received from Councillor Locke with Councillor Cartwright substituting, and apologies received from Councillor David Smith.
Thank you. Item 2, declarations of interest. Do any members of the committee have any declarations of interest in any of the items under consideration at this meeting?
Chair, is it appropriate to bring it up here that I'm here as a member of the committee, not as a ward councillor, and obviously, I'll be reading. I've read through the report, and I'll be listening to all the comments for and against before making my mind up.
Thank you, Councillor Keeble. Item 3, minutes. Do we confirm the minutes of the meetings of Strategic Planning Committee held on 21st October 2025 and 18th of November 2025 as a correct record, please? Yeah. Yes. Thank you. Item 4, Chair's announcements. As this is our last meeting, I'd like to say Merry Christmas to you all, Happy Holidays, and I hope you all have a fantastic New Year. But before we enjoy all that, we still have this committee meeting to contend with. So on to our usual announcements of members of the public are permitted to film, broadcast and report on this meeting, subject to the efficient running of the meeting not being affected. Only those people who have registered in line with the committee's speaking procedure may address the committee. Members of the public are requested not to call out during committee discussions on any item. Anybody who repeatedly disrupts the meeting may be asked to leave. All speakers will have 5 minutes in which to make their statement and are asked to remain seated after they have addressed the committee to answer any questions the committee may have. This meeting is being webcast on the Council's corporate YouTube channel. Therefore, when speaking, please speak clearly and concisely into your microphone at all times. There are no planned fire drills, so if the alarm does sound, evacuation instructions will be given by Democratic Services. Please ensure any devices are switched off or on silent mode. And for the benefit of the public watching remotely, I will now introduce the committee and the officers, starting with my furthest right, please.
Good afternoon, Chair. My name's Sian Webb. I'm Principal Planning and Highways Lawyer. Thank you.
Through you, Chair, is Diana Davis, Democratic Services Officer.
Councillor Scott Packard, Chair.
Simon Ellis, Head of Development Management.
Nikki Scaife, Major Projects Team Leader.
Chris Bates, Principal Planning Officer.
Jason Conway, Development Management Engineer.
Bill Donaldson, Principal Highways DM Engineer.
Councillor Sally Keeble, Darlington Ward. Darlington Spencer Ward.
Bob Purcell, Abington and Phipsville Ward.
Councillor Phil Bignell, Champion Ward.
Councillor Charles Manners.
Councillor Rosie Humphreys.
Councillor Ron Furman.
Councillor Adrian Cartwright.
Councillor Trevor Hughes.
Councillor David Gaskell.
Councillor Richard Pipes.
Thank you, everyone. Can I just remind everyone to speak a bit closer to their microphones, please, so everyone online and in the area can actually hear what everyone's saying, please. Agenda item number 5, WNN/2023/0083, Car Park Railway Station, Black Line Hill, Northampton. I'll now hand over to the case officer, Chris Bates, to begin the presentation.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick introduction. This application was previously considered at the Strategic Planning Committee on 21st of October, in which members resolved that the application be deferred in order for officers to provide further details and clarification on various matters, which were debated during the course of the meeting. These points are raised in the updated committee report and has been supported by a members' briefing note and various CGIs showing how the development could come forward. Just a quick verbal update. 2 additional conditions to those shown on the draft list of draft conditions has been included. These relate to a car park management scheme and also a phasing plan to ensure that the existing decked car park remains in operation whilst a new multi-storey car park is constructed. Also, within the last few days, 2 letters of objection have been received. Both letters raise similar issues relating to the need for a major transport hub, the lack of accessibility for pedestrians and cyclists, and the increase in traffic congestion and being an appropriate location for residential-led development. This application is a hybrid application where full plan permission is sought for phase 1, which includes a multi-storey car park with public groundworks and then outline permission with details of access and scale to be provided in relation to phases 2 and 2A, which is a residential development and a hotel. For all matters to be reserved and provided as part of any subsequent reserved matters application. This parcel of land is policy-led, with policy A1 of the Northampton local plan setting out the various criteria that are to be met. Site LAA0288 relates to the land assessed as part of this application. Shown on the screen are some key parts of the policy which have been comprehensively addressed as part of this application. The application site is denoted in red, whilst the adjoining site, LAA0333 in blue, which in line with policy guidance is set to deliver around about 188 dwellings. As seen on screen, access to the existing site is taken off St Andrews Road, with a sweeping internal road leading to the car parking, which is splayed across the site. Parking is provided on ground level and within a dated decked car park. Disused railway tracks, cycle parking, and other ancillary aspects also feature. Section A at the top, looking north. Land levels rise from west to east, and section B at the bottom, looking east, land levels fall north to south. As shown on the screen are the phases of the development. Phase 1, which is the multi-storey car park, that is marked up in red. Phase 2, which is the residential development, that's marked up in pink. Then phase 2A is the hotel complex, marked up in blue. In terms of the proposed site plan, the proposed development would take primary access again from St Andrews Road into the northeastern corner of the site. The site plan shows a dedicated cycle path for the site, which is highlighted in green. This extends from Black Lion Hill past the station building across a dedicated crossing and behind a new car park, which then links up to St Andrews Road in the east. This will then link up to the new dedicated wayfinding and highways improvement along Scarlet Wells Street and Bath Street to provide safe cycle connections, the bus station and the wider town centre. As previously alluded to, phases 2 and 2A layouts are not considered at this stage, and an indicative layout has been provided to show how it can come forward at reserved matters stage. The distance from the multi-storey car park to the station building is approximately 125 metres. This provides a direct and safe passage, whilst the decked car park was not similarly aligned, and while some spaces are only 50 metres away from the station building, some could be as far as 150 metres away. Shown on the screen are typical elevation plans of the multi-storey car park. Members should be aware that this was originally planned over 9 stories. However, owing to traffic and visual concerns, this was reduced to 6 stories, providing a total of 854 car parking spaces, reaching a maximum height of 20 metres. The car park would have a contemporary but functional design reflective of its purpose. Its proposed exterior would be finished in the modular perforated panels to allow light and airflow. And there would be some colour variation to add a bit of visual interest and break down the form of the building. Artistic impressions are now shown on the screen with a 3D facade view emphasising the high quality design and the use of sustainable materials. Conditions would secure scheduled materials and further architectural detailing. In lieu of this, the existing surface car park is considered to be solely functional in design with little to no merit. Its replacement with contemporary design, as seen on screen, is considered to be of a significant improvement to the character of the local area. Other parts of phase one include the provision of cycle and motor parking to provide alternative and sustainable modes of transport, and to enable a safe and accessible route for pedestrians and users of the car park. A covered walkway is also to be provided. To the front of the station as well, a new ramp is to be provided to provide easier access to wheelchair users and visitors in general. As alluded to in the committee reports and within the development description, details of scale are to be assessed and determined at this stage. The car park is to be 6 stories, as is the residential development, whilst the hotel, shown in yellow, is to be a maximum of 5 stories. A site sections drawing illustrates how these will be brought forward on site. Phase 2 would include up to 280 units, whilst Phase 2A hotel would provide up to 100 rooms. On the next set of slides, indicative visuals are provided from vantage points from both near and far across the site, illustrating the scales of all phases 1, 2, and 2A. These are typically shown in red dashed outline. First from West Bridge to the southwest of the station, with the building line, the station building in the background. Next to the east of the railway station building, indicatively shown is the scale of the hotel complex. Then again from St Andrews Road, opposite the access with the multi-storey car park and the residential block, indicatively shown. The next 2 slides show it from Northampton Castle information board on a high ground level, first looking northwest, and secondly looking southwest. Here are likely vantage points from St James Park Road, which are shown on the opposite side of the railway tracks to the west. Next are views from Victoria Park to the northwest of the site. Views from St Peter's Gardens. Views from Toaster Road above the Grand Union Canal. And finally, a distant view from Mill Lane at the railway bridge. The next couple of slides demonstrates the additional information in respect to the members' queries raised at the previous planning committee. These are covered in the committee report updates. First shown is a visualisation of the pedestrian cycle movements through the site. That's shown in the green line. This is then expanded upon to show how this connects to the existing pedestrian and cycle routes to the sound centre, university and the bus station, for example. Critically marked up in red is the improvements made along the bus station route from the railway station. These improvements came about following the site visit and a follow-up meeting where discussions were made on the most feasible options, with various options along Mayfair, for example, discounted owing to restrictions. This image shows the extent of the accessibility across the site for users. Note the vast numbers of improvements to be made. And this site again reinforces the improvements across the site in terms of BNG, SURDS landscaping and promoting sustainability, all of which are policy compliant. The applicant has provided various CGIs to show how the site can come forward on both phases 1, 2 and 2A. The first CGI shows how the development could come forward from an aerial view. This illustrates the high quality build of all the developments, along with the clear connectivity through the site interspersed within the public realm. Again, this CGI, this time from ground level, this provides a concept of how the development will come forward from the rear of the station building with a strong emphasis on the public realm, creating an inviting and safe environment for both those using the train station and from residential elements. So in conclusion, officer's recommendation is to grant permission subject to conditions set out in the officer report and also subject to completion of the Section 106 agreement. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chris. Councillor Keeble, please.
Sorry, it's just in relation to the presentation. I wonder if you could go back to the slide that showed the ramp arrangement, because it disappeared up behind the little image up there. If you go back quite a way on one of the earlier plans, it showed the ramp access at the front of the station, and that was a key issue about the previous plan. But you will, no, it's quite a lot further back, but it's further back. It's before the pictures. It's one before that. Yeah, you see it's up behind the screen. You'll have to move that the image down. Yeah, so we can see, because that's the ramp that's supposed to provide disabled access, isn't it? Could you just talk us through how that works? And is there anything, or could you enlarge it if you just expand it so we can see it a bit better? Because that was a crucial issue about making the station compliant with DDA. If you go back to that image, you can perhaps just expand it a bit. That one there, yeah. I think if you expand the whole screen, some of the slide will go off, but we should be able to see enough of it to see, because it's a bit small, I can't quite work out what it's showing.
For you, Chair, yeah, if I show you on the site plan, I mean, it's kind of compliant with all the relevant standards. It is going to take up some of the pavement area, but it's obviously, I don't really know much detail I can tell you, but yes, it's a standard ramp, which is to go on to obviously allow wheelchair access.
I think it would be quite important to see it, if possible, in that image, because I've seen the floor plan too, and it's virtually impossible to visualize how it would work. But if there's a artist visualization there, then we could actually see how it works.
Councillor Cartwright, did you want to come in?
Yeah, Chair, thanks. That looks like the front steps, but the path goes down the side and round the back to where the lift is for wheelchair access, isn't it?
It was supposed to be they said they were putting a ramp up the front, and it was supposed to be like next to it was supposed to come off the pavement and go around and go up next to the steps so that people could go in the front entrance without having to go up the steps. But it wasn't seen clearly. And this is the first time I've actually seen it, visualization of it, but it's not just going around the back.
Thanks for that. Yeah, because it looks a bit steep at the front for a ramp. That was with the stairs. That was all. That's why I thought it just went round the back to where the lift is. No.
It effectively goes, so it's along the side of the station that is onto Blackline Hill, kind of comes along that side of the building and up towards the top of the stairs. It basically meets kind of where the top of the stairs finish at the moment.
So you get
to go into
free
the front
access
entrance.
onto the.
Yeah.
Okay, do committee have any other councillor Manners, please?
Thank you, Chair. Chris, just a quick question about the phasing. Phase 2 is the flats, is my understanding. And what's the likely timescales after the car park is actually built? Because there's no certainty that will happen. Would I be correct in saying that? And really my question is, can we put any conditions to ensure that the area that the phase 2 is going to be built on potentially is kept in and looking good and is properly boarded, whatever just so that actually it isn't the first thing you walk out of the station and see a derelict site? Because what worries me is that this will never happen.
Future again. Yeah, so condition 2 sets out when the reserve matters will have to be obviously submitted to the council. In terms of, it's a good question, in terms of it being boarded up, as part of the construction management plan, yeah, we'd obviously get some kind of public round, make sure some hoardings in place, and that'll be, yeah, that form part of that condition.
Can we put a condition on that the site's got to be look respectable? Because you'll come down the ramp, you'll be able to look into it, won't you?
Yeah, we can have I think maybe tweak it, yeah, but yeah, well, obviously, yeah, I'll make notes of that and make sure that is.
Can we put that as a condition?
It'd probably be updated to the CPM and CMP.
We can look at adding a kind of an additional phasing condition, kind of, I think we've done it on another site in Northampton, kind of, might even have been Debenham site, I think,
Yep.
to make sure there's some sort of contractual arrangement to kind of give that confidence about
Great.
the rest of the site coming
Thank you.
forward. So we can have a look at that.
Yes, through you, Chair. My concern is outside the red line, which is obviously not what we're considering, is the cycleway into the town, the cycleway stroke pathway into the town. How are we going to guarantee that actually, I mean, what I've seen of it so far, it doesn't really provide a segregated pathway for cycle and pedestrians going into the town. And it seems you're disjointing this nice development from the centre of the town. I know it's not on the red line, but it's an important consideration if we're trying to encourage people to use this in conjunction with buses or whatever that, and as opposed to parking cars and things. So how can we make sure there is a proper segregated pathway, cycleway with this?
Through you, Chair. So we walked the route from the station to the bus station with the applicant to determine the best kind of route through. The route is identified in the draft LC whip as a route for improvement. So the route that's shown, I don't know if you can bring the plan up, the route that's agreed through this area follows Lower Bath Street, essentially. So the roads within this area have largely been blocked off to stop rat running. So they have a number of like build outs and bollards across the road. So they're very low trafficked streets. So we would consider cyclists being able to utilise those carriageways quite safely without the need for any formal curb segregation of routes for cyclists. So as part of the development, there'll be a requirement to provide a few extra drop curbs and locations where there are barriers to cyclists and voice scooter users. They will be adjusted so that there's a free sort of route through without having to dismount to get across obstacles.
But is it actually wide enough at all points to accommodate both pedestrians and scooter stroke cycles? That's my concern. It does narrow certain points.
Yeah, so there's improvements on St Andrews Road itself. So there's some widening where the formal controlled crossing would go, which leads pedestrians and cyclists into Scarletwell Street, from which point it's sort of carriageway use right up to, I think it's Upper Mounts, when you're almost at the bus station, and obviously the Marehold sort of development area.
So final point, when you go up Gold Street from the bottom there, I mean, you're going to increase the pathway that comes out into the road, so because I mean it's quite it's a shopping area, you know, we're getting conflicts at that point, aren't we?
Yeah, I mean, Gold Street is primarily, in terms of the footway, it's there is provision of cyclists on the carriageway. There's difficulties in available highway land, essentially, to deliver quite a wide shared sort of provision at Gold Street. So that would remain as it is, with pedestrians on the footway and cyclists utilising the carriageway surface.
So was it not considered to make it just a cycle and bus route in terms of not making it a car access anyway it goes to? Wouldn't that be a better solution?
There is now camera enforcement on that route to prevent unauthorised vehicular access.
But if you made it a non-car road, then we'd be away, wouldn't we?
Well, it's still important to allow, obviously, bus access still has to, so you need a carriageway.
Bus and cycleway, yeah, the combined one, but no cars.
Sorry, through you, Chair, and just the actual policy for kind of the Northampton station development kind of refers to specifically looking at linkages, improving linkages through spring boroughs towards the town centre as well. So hence why it was looked at for that route.
Councillor Gaskell, please.
Thanks, Chair. Similar to Councillor Manners' comments on the building and construction limits, what measures are going to be in place during the construction to protect all the trees, existing trees and landscaping in the area? Because your CGI images show like before and after, and obviously it's shown with existing foliage in place. Will any of that be removed during the construction phase?
For you, Chair, there is a tree constraints, and I think there was a landscaping plan. Yes, so some trees will be coming out, but I think that was only to kind of aid with the access, but a lot of it will be kept in place, and obviously there will be like reinforcements with the landscaping and also the public realm as well, so that'll be improved.
Councillor Pipes, please.
Previously, when we were looking at this before, the car park was going to be either fully paid by WNC or partly. Is that still the case?
I mean, that's not particularly relevant to the planning consideration, and considering the planning scheme, the council are intending to take on lease of the car park, however.
Okay. This may seem a bizarre question in view of the amount of money being spent on this, but have we got any assurances or guarantees that they're not going to close Northampton railway station in the next 5 to 10 years after this has been done?
That's not relevant to what we're considering today, councillor.
Okay.
Councillor Humphreys, please.
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, the proposal in front of us is very much an improvement on what's there at the moment, but just like to ask the planning officer, how do you explain that this will make an attractive gateway into our town? Thank you.
For your Chair again, yeah, I mean, we've been had extensive discussions with the agent and their kind of technical consultees, so their architects, and yeah, we've obviously the car park's only for termination in terms of its full kind of details, so that's what we're assessing at the minute. In terms of the hotel and the residential, that's reserved for a later application. So all we're assessing at the minute is the actual scale, so the 5 stories and the 6 stories respectively. But yeah, so when any kind of reserve matters comes into submission to us, yeah, we'll obviously make sure it does relate well to the existing area and make sure it is of a high quality design and made from obviously the most sustainable materials.
Councillor Pipes, please.
When you turned down the height of the car park, did they approach you with a larger floor plan for the car park to accommodate the extra cars that they're obviously not going to have now?
No, the actual footprint of the car park stayed the same. It was literally the number of stories that were reduced to be comparable to what's there now effectively. And that was in part due to discussions with Highway Authority and potential increased vehicle movements to and from the station when we were trying to encourage sustainable transport methods.
Councillor Keeble.
Thank you very much. There's a few points. One is it builds on what Councillor Mann has asked, which is about the timescale for all of this. Because one of the reasons we're in this problem is because there was a plan for a car park previously, but it never materialised. And with this one, there's going to be, I mean, the parking would be built quite some way off, and then the vacant site, which would be very substantial, would be blocked off. And would the walkway be provided early on so that people can walk through safely? And I mean, I am really concerned about the impact of people having to walk past a barricaded off site for years after this has been approved to get to the car park. Bearing in mind, you know, we have a number of other barricaded off places around town, and it is not a good environment for people to be walking around. So that's one. And also for the walking and cycle routes, there's quite a lot made about the walking and cycle routes. In paragraph 47, however, it points to the fact that the walking and cycle routes improvements are a vision for over the next 20 years, and that does not say a lot about how those walking and cycle routes are going to be improved. And it's not just about the paving, it's also about the lighting, because those areas, I don't know if you walked round in the daytime or in the evening, but that walking route isn't the most obvious one if you're walking from the station up to the bus station and you want to do so in a safe and well lit area. And the top of it actually, in any event, is through up, you know, across a side street and through a park area, which is unpleasant, particularly if you're carrying things. So I'd like some comments on that. On 413, there's discussion which comes back to the point that I think one of the other councillors raised about the future of the station. It says there's new routes. Now, Northampton's obviously on a loop line. So I wondered what the new routes were, because there's been a lot of talk about getting different routes and different connections. And so far, they've not come to anything. So I wonder what those new routes are. And there's one also about housing, which is quite a big issue because that's in phase 2. And it's supposed to be 2-bedroom and 1-bedroom housing, and some of it's social or affordable. Now, last night, some of the councillors here would have been involved in the workshop on housing allocations, where West Northants is changing its housing allocations in relation to single people. And I just wonder if that has been run through these housing proposals, because you wouldn't be able to house, or it wouldn't get single homeless people allocated off the housing list unless they've got other vulnerabilities, like they're disabled. And putting them in that kind of a location, I'd have thought, if the people with disabilities, is not a particularly good one because of the difficulty of getting in and out. I don't see much in the way of traffic calming there. So there's one little pedestrian crossing. I wonder if something could be said about how you have a 280 unit block of flats, which is more or less in a traffic island, in a roundabout, and how you manage that parking. Because thinking about the only other one that I can think of like that is probably Park Plaza in London, which is a hotel, which has got quite careful entrance and exit routes. You've got a comment on 434, paragraph 432, about the price of parking, and what that's going to do, whether it's going to be accessible for people in the flats. And there's a comment there about the annual charge currently, which is £1,425.60p. And I wonder if some thought has been given to if that parking garage is actually going to be accessible to people in the flats. And if so, what that then does to the parking for people coming to get the train. I think those are some of the main things. Any information about the lighting would be very good. And I think also information like about the timeline would be very important too. Thank you.
In terms of street lighting, it is always that there is already street lighting along that route, and apparently it's covered by CC. Sorry, in terms of the street lighting, there is already lighting along that additional pedestrian, the improved pedestrian.
Behind the hotel. And I just wonder if all the place there is well lit, because I walk that quite frequently, and I'll walk it in the evening, and I tend to go the other way around to try to make use of the better lighting.
Is it shown on that plan there, Councillor Keeble, or is it just off of that?
Certainly, Chair. I think she's talking about where the Park Inn or whatever it's called now is, that the other side of Mayfair or Horse Market, whatever the dual carriageway is. On your walk into the bus station.
Is it the route along Upper Bath Street, that area that you're looking at, or?
Exactly. If you scroll back to the slide, which has got the little red line on it, you'll see the red line that sort of stops when you get to the other side of the dual carriageway, and it doesn't, that's it. It's a top bit.
Through you, Chair. I think you're referring to Greyfriars as it heads up between the multi-storey car park and the hotel towards the bus station. So that it is street lit. The footway runs along the carriageway edge, right up to the bus station currently. Obviously, you'll be aware of proposals for the whole redevelopment of that area, including where the multi-storey car park is, right up towards where the old bus station was. So that whole area is due for redevelopment. But in terms of that route, it is lit. I appreciate there are trees next to it, but it is lit. There is a footway and a direct link immediately adjacent to a carriageway.
Okay, in terms of new routes on the station, I'll leave the applicant to see if they can add any more on that element. Sorry, the future of the station and any new routes. In terms of housing allocations, so the residential element is in outline at the moment. There is reference to potential for 1 and 2 beds, but the detail of exactly the mix and type of housing will come forward as part of the Reserve Matters approval. There is the outline consent would be subject to a Section 106 agreement that would require the provision of, I think it's 35% affordable housing in this instance. And as part of the Section 106 drafting and negotiations, we would agree the mix of that to kind of set the parameters for what should come forward as part of the Reserve Matters. But we won't know the detail in terms of the precise type and mix of housing until that Reserve Matters scheme's submitted. But we'll discuss that with Housing Strategy colleagues as well.
Sorry, there was a few points. There's a point about in 4.7 where it says that it's over the next 20 years that the cycling and walking routes are going to be provided. And then there was a point about the cost of the parking as well.
In terms of the cost of the car parking, we're as Chris said earlier, we're putting on a condition for a car park management plan. Ultimately, because the intention is that the council will take on the running of that car park, it will ultimately be for them to determine how that car park is managed and how spaces are allocated. And that's hence why we're putting that condition on to agree that finer detail.
Councillor Furman, please.
Thank you, Chair. I wasn't here for the first consultation. Moving the car park north or country end in railways terms, you're going to be losing 30 or 40 car spaces because there was a extra overflow there. And then on top of that, where the walkway is, you're losing another 30 car places, which are set down and pickups. I just wanted to know, has that really been taken into account? Thank you.
In terms of space numbers, obviously the kind of spaces are quite splayed across the site at the minute. So where there were some space different parts which have been used for different things. In terms of the numbers on the existing, there's only a reduction of 12 spaces proposed, so that's where the shortfall is coming. But on the flip side, there is an increase in accessible spaces going from 12 to 43. So I don't know if that covers your query, but that's some of the figures we've got.
Councillor Cartwright.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm just a bit disturbed by the comments earlier. The Councillor Pipes made reference who's paying for it, because it seems to be that we're paying out or taking the lease on a lot of money to stand still exactly where we are, give or take a couple of spaces. And also, we seem to be adamant about we're trying to reduce the amount of vehicles going there. So we're paying for a car park that we're going to get down to the 0 spaces on. I'm not quite sure what the plan is.
So the car park is effectively intended as a replacement of the existing decked car park, which it's basically intended to improve the quality of the area. So it wasn't intended as an increase in spaces for Northampton Station. In terms of the lease to West Northampton, I mean, that's kind of separate from planning matters. That's a matter that went to Cabinet, I think, back in 2021. can't confirm that, but that's a matter that's kind of been agreed outside of planning committee, and that was agreed as a joint venture between Blockwork and WNC to bring that car park forward.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for, but we keep hearing the stated aim is to reduce the amount of vehicles. You know, we're building properties that we don't want any vehicles there. If you reduce the amount of vehicles down to a few commuters on the train station, do we need a car park?
So Network Rail are required to provide a certain level of parking for their passengers. The agent can kind of clarify this in more detail, but my understanding is that the existing car park, there's still some additional capacity in the existing car park. So it's deemed that what's proposed in terms of spaces will be sufficient for the customers for Network Rail, and there may well be some spare capacity to consider as for additional parking for people in residential flats. But that's why that detail will come forward more as part of the management plan. But effectively, there's enough spaces to meet the needs of Network Rail and keep sustainable transport in terms of rail movements there.
Thank you.
Just one question from me. If the plan was to never increase the number of car parking spaces, why was the original plan for 9 stories? That would have increased car parking spaces. Surely that would have been to accommodate the people in the flats who would have wanted to park in a car park.
So the justification behind that in the transport assessment was that was to accommodate future increases in rail use. However, the transport assessment wasn't able to clearly justify and evidence that to our satisfaction, and that's why they ended up eliminating that aspect of the development. So they ended up coming back with just a replacement car park. And so it was essentially a zero car development for the residential aspect of the scheme.
Okay, in percentage terms, what spare capacity do we have at the moment in the existing car park?
In the existing car park, it's currently at approximately 52% spare capacity, which is, I think it's about 439 additional arrivals could be accommodated.
That seems a lot. I can't believe that, really. How have we got to that figure? I'm not doubting you personally.
Yeah.
I'm just, how does that figure?
That is according to the parking accumulation survey that was undertaken.
Okay, because I'm just looking at the size of Longbuckby station, that probably has that amount of vehicles, and for Northampton to only have the same amount of vehicles parking in a car park doesn't add up to me. That doesn't make sense. None of this makes sense to me, if I'm honest. The hotel is going to take at least 100, getting on to 200 spaces, isn't it? The pink blob people, I don't know how many apartments are going to be in there, but people will drive cars and they will use the car park and they will have to pay a premium to use it, because I just can't see how this car park is going to be big enough for the future. This is not a forward-thinking project in my mind. And the problem is when people turn up to the car park to get on a very important business meeting, train for a very important business meeting, and they can't get a space and they miss the train because they can't park anywhere. They're just not going to bother going to the railway station car park, and therefore the numbers of people going to the railway station will fall down. This is where I asked the question, have we got any assurances that this railway station will remain open for quite some considerable time? The reason I'm going down this line of questioning is because Northampton Gateway, which is on the same branch line, has 16 trains projected to turn up a day. And Daventry International Rail Freight Terminal currently has 12 to 16 trains a day, but that is meant to go up to 32 freight trains a day. My concern is this plan, which is not forward thinking, will give Network Rail a good excuse to shut the station down, and also Longbutby, which will affect my Daventry constituents.
Okay, we'll leave that to the applicant to respond to those questions, Richard. Okay. Councillor Cartwright, please, and then we'll move on to
thank you, Chair.
Humphreys and Councillor Manners.
Yeah, the issue is I personally believe we need more capacity for the car park, not trying to stay still. If we're going to go the effort of doing it, we need to make more. I mean, especially as there's going to be a hotel, extra personal property on this site. Sorry, am I too far away from that? Yeah, we need a larger capacity, especially with the hotel and with flats on site. That would only seem sensible. That seems a way of ensuring that you're going to get some revenue in. Thank you.
Just on a different issue, planning policy response has identified a deficit of 3.43 hectares of open space, which is a significant amount, and there'll need to be open space upgrades elsewhere to compensate for that. Appreciate we've got to consider the application in hand, but are there examples elsewhere in Northampton where there's been insufficient green space and we've made improvements? Thank you.
For you, Chair, on top of my head, I wouldn't know any examples, but through the Section 106, they are providing a sum, which I don't know off the top of my head, but yeah, basically, because of the limited amount of open space they are providing on site, that they are providing a fee to provide off-site open space. So that's through a contribution towards maintenance of open space and for sports pitches deliveries and maintenance. So that fee is £805,286. So that's to compensate for the loss of open space on site.
Thank you, Chair. Going back to the car parking, 52%, over what period? Is that a 7-day period? Because it's the most important aspect of car parking is Tuesday to Thursday, the commuting. How busy is the car park during those days?
We wouldn't have that data to hand of how long it was carried out over, but the specific 52% capacity, that's at the 1 o'clock. I think it was around about a 1 p.m. period, between 1 and 2 p.m. So that's the middle of the day, when the long stay is are there. So people that are leaving their cars for a long period of time.
7 days, 3 days, 5 days?
As I said, we don't have that data to hand.
So why say 52% if you don't understand the data?
The applicant may be able to help with that.
Okay, do we have any other questions for the officers, please, before we move on to public speaking? Councillor Keeble?
Sorry, I just want to go back to that route again, because you showed the route. And that's a cycle route, yeah? Because what's supposed to be the walking route, because that is a significantly, you can see where the pink arrow ends is where the station is. And if people are going to walk into the town centre, the route you've got is roughly double the shortest route. And that's fine if you're cycling, although what you do with your bike when you get to the bus station, I don't know. But if you're walking, that, unless you give people a lot of sight, that is not a very obvious route to use. And I'd come back to, I don't think that the walking routes are properly lit. And the most obvious walking route, which takes you along where that yellow line goes, one of the crucial roundabouts, there's no pedestrian crossing. And, you know, if you're, because there's no obvious sort of hopper service between the station and the train station and the bus station, then people often do have to walk. If you're going to get a bus like to the Eastern District, for example. And I just would come back on the need to make sure that there's safe walking routes, and the fact that in this document under, I think it's 447, it says it's that the walking routes and cycle route improvement across town is scheduled for the next 20 years without giving a timeline as to when these would be prioritised. And that's important for people walking between there, particularly in the winter months when it's dark. So that looks like a cycle route rather than, I just want to come back on that again.
Again, for you, Chair, the route in red, that is policy compliant. So the policy sets out improvements to Spring Boroughs, and that's obviously where the kind of improvements have been made, and that's been discussions between the local highways authority and the highways consultant for the applicant. Did you query bus routes between the bus station and the train station?
We're talking about, you know, we're having to make a decision on a planning application, and one of the things that's being put out as an improvement is consideration to the cycle and walking routes between the train station and the bus station, given that the buses aren't going to come down to the train station and there's not a hopper service. So what, if people are walking between the two, are you proposing that they walk along the pink route and then along the red route? Or are you proposing that they take a shorter route, and there are plenty of shorter walking routes, and are those lit?
What it's doing is effectively offering an alternative option for people. There are several walking routes from the station. That was perceived as being a route that could be improved, because we also looked at routes along Mayfair, which is a more direct route onto Gold Street, but there wasn't sufficient space to do kind of improved pedestrian and cycle route connectivity. So that's why the route through Spring Boroughs was looked at, in addition to the fact that the policy actually steers it to that direction as well. But there are various choices of routes that people could take from the train station. That's one of many, and that is one that's proposed to be improved as part of this application.
Councillor Cartwright.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, well, there is a bus stop right outside the train station anyway, isn't it? It will take you to the bus station. So, I mean, that is another possible route, I suppose.
Councillor Gaskell.
Yeah, concerns about you're going to have a new accommodation block there. There's not enough parking, so predominantly everyone's going to be cycling, walking, or dare I say it, on electric e-scooters. There's no planning whatsoever for that kind of infrastructure involved in this. It all just seems to be about putting the car park in, putting a block of flats in, putting a hotel in, and a walking route. I think there needs to be a little bit more focus on pedestrian, cycling, dare I say it, e-scooters.
Okay, thank you, committee. Can I invite, unless anyone's, no? Yeah, okay. Can I invite Ryan Hartwell, please, to come up and speak? Thank you.
As you can tell, it's my first time doing this, so apologies. Right. So, as a resident of Northampton and a commuter who regularly cycles to and from the station, I'd like to speak in opposition to the proposal in its current form. I'd also like to reflect the sentiment of councillors at the previous meeting on how critical it is for the town that we get this development right. Firstly, I object to the full consent for phase 1 that is sought for the multi-storey car park. Part B, 4 of policy MO1 in the local plan states, development should be designed to achieve the following sustainable travel principles to maximise opportunities for integrated, secure and safe walking and cycling routes. This is also supported by Part I3 of policy A1 in the local plan, which notes this high quality development must secure permeability within the site for pedestrians and cyclists. The current proposal does not meet these policies. As an example of the current issues, the design sees the cycle track crossing the main pedestrian route for accessing the taxi rank, the car park, and the car-free housing development shortly after crossing the side road behind the station. This pinch point will inevitably lead to conflict between pedestrians and cyclists, particularly at peak commuting times. Another example is the access to the cycle parking. It requires users to navigate the pinch point mentioned and a tight turn before merging with a section of shared path that strikingly also serves as access to the disabled parking. Concerns raised at the last meeting by Living Streets include the potentially secluded and poorly lit nature of the cycle track as it goes behind the multi-storey car park, and these also remain unaddressed. And in the report presented to the committee, Active Travel England are noted to have confirmed that the majority of concerns have not been addressed by successive submissions. I would therefore ask that the application be deferred again to allow the applicants, West Northampton Council, Active Travel England, and local stakeholder groups to come up with an improved proposal with solutions to these and other issues, ensuring that they maximise the opportunities within this development for secure and safe walking and cycling routes in line with the stated policies. I'd also like to note that generally the approach to active travel provision in this development has been minimal and piecemeal in its engagement with users of the station. Simply providing more of the same cycle parking is a tokenistic gesture if the proposal does not deliver the infrastructure to ensure more people are cycling to and from the station. And once again, Northampton is at risk of falling behind other local towns in terms of our infrastructure. Secondly, I object to the outline consent for phase 2A that is sought for the hotel. Part C of policy A1 of the local plan states, to secure the protection, enhancement and enjoyment of the character and setting of the adjacent listed building and its 2 adjoining listed walls that are located within the existing railway station site, public realm will be created between the heritage assets and the station building. Any proposal should result in an improvement to the sense of arrival to the town centre. Again, the current proposal does not meet this policy. In the report presented to the committee, WNC policy note that there is no obvious reference in the illustrations as to how the public realm space is being proposed and designed in a manner in which it will have a positive relationship with the heritage assets within the vicinity and how it will result in an improvement to the sense of arrival to the town centre. The proposal for a hotel on this site as part of phase 2A is fundamentally flawed, both in this regard and as a concept. Given the importance of this to the area and the town, it is not acceptable that it should be addressed within reserved matters. I would ask that the committee seek to refuse outline consent for phase 2A. This should be followed by WNC entering into discussions with Network Rail as a public entity to identify a new proposal and separate application for how the land currently indicated for development as a hotel can be utilised to deliver a public realm or civic space as required by Part C. This should consider the success of the recent improvements to Castle Park, the importance of the Postern Gate, and the 4 waterside development, which also includes a proposal for a hotel in close proximity. This approach would also enable policy ENV2, providing open space, to be better met. Rather than just seeing a financial contribution, it would support the creation of an open space for future residents and avoid the risk that this proposal would otherwise see overdevelopment with isolated and poorly provisioned housing wedged between a car park, hotel and station. Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. Any questions for Ryan, please, committee? Councillor Keeble.
Thank you. I've got one question, and I'm sorry, I just didn't hear when you said well, you referenced an authority that said that the obligations had not been met or the objections had not been met. I wonder if you could just say who that was. I just didn't hear it.
Yeah, that's okay. That's Active Travel England. So, okay. Yeah.
Councillor Humphreys, please.
Thank you. As regards Active Travel England, in their response in the report, they seem to say that subject to conditions, they consider that their requests have been dealt with. Does that not reassure you?
It doesn't. My personal reading is that there has, in essence, it hasn't seemed like the most cooperative relationship with Active Travel England, based on how it's reflected there. I would be more than welcome. I would welcome seeing all the correspondence and the position of Active Travel England, or asking them to revisit. I'm not reassured, given the quality of what is being proposed. I would be reluctant to suggest they're content with it. I imagine at some point they want to avoid being a blocker to development, but equally we have to get this right. So no, it doesn't reassure me.
Any other questions for Ryan, please, committee? No. Thank you, Ryan. Cheers. Can I ask Elenid Lewis Nicol, please, to come up and speak?
Hi, can you hear me? Yeah. Thank you, Chair, and also thank you to the Planning Officer for facilitating me, to enable me to speak today. And thank you for listening. I'm sorry, let's get this. Like that. Thank you. Right. At the last meeting, a series of concerns were raised. The briefing note, which has been written to address these, makes some welcome additions, including a green roof to the covered walkway and some bushes around the car park. Unfortunately, not the green roof to the car park itself, which was suggested at the last meeting, but nevertheless, welcome additions. However, the basic plan remains the same of 3 monolithic structures, 5-6 stories each. One result of this overcrowding on the site is that the planned for block of flats is a mere 21 metres away from the multi-storey car park, and that residents will undoubtedly be exposed to high levels of pollution as a result of this, which the small amount of green roof on the covered walkway and a few bushes will have a struggle to mitigate. I also like to note that the briefing note says that the effect on air quality will be minimal as a result of this development. Well, that was before people were expected to be living on the site. If you're living on the site, higher standards are needed. And it's also to be noted that the standards which are deemed acceptable are those of the World Health Organization, which were withdrawn back in 2005. They're now 20 years old. There are much higher standards now, which have been a response to all the research that's gone into the effect on people's health of air level pollution. Another result of the overcrowding of the buildings on this site is that provision for the pedestrians and cyclists is squashed around the edges. I think this has already been raised. Pedestrians and cyclists entering from the north are made to take this circuitous route round the side and the back of the multi-storey car park, and then along the edge of the railway lines and the multi-storey car park. The sharing of this path by pedestrians and cyclists is non-LTN 20 compliant, and its route is quite isolated, potentially unsafe, especially and certainly off-putting for female cyclists. This route also means that the cycle path does not go all the way to the so-called car-free flats or to the car-free hotel. The route from the cycle parking to Blackline Hill, as I think the previous speaker mentioned, is narrow, crowded, with conflict between cycles, pedestrians and scooters. The position of the hotel will make it impossible to create a better exit for this side of the station in future. There is also no room on the site for the future improvement in bus rail connectivity. Now, it's asserted in the briefing note that existing bus rail connections are adequate, citing as evidence that half the existing bus routes go along Blackline Hill. That means half don't. And nor would residents living in rural villages that have infrequent or non-existent bus service deem that the connectivity was adequate. The briefing note states that Stagecoach has no plans to increase bus services, but this does not mean that people do not need more bus services, merely that they're not going to provide them. And certainly the plans as presented will make it difficult for needs to be met in the future, as they do not allow room for any improvement to bus rail connectivity other than some signage. As for the active travel connectivity, the briefing note, as I say, we will welcome again. We've got some dropped curbs going from the route from the rail station to the bus station. And also, there's a slight widening of paths. This is all to be welcomed. But what if anybody wants to go anywhere but the bus station? And certainly, as I think a previous speaker pointed out, cyclists will certainly probably not be heading for the buses. There is little connectivity planned to anywhere else in the town, or not even via any of the other cycle routes identified in the LCW whip. Right, the previous speaker did address my concerns very well on the heritage of this site. I would ask that the committee rejects the plan on the following grounds. One, it does not provide good housing in areas which are green and clean, quote from the WNC's health and well-being strategy. It makes little improvement to rail and bus active travel connectivity, and as set out in policy 3 of the local travel plan. It does not champion active travel and support behaviour change to make active travel a first choice, as set out in WNC's active lives strategy delivery plan.
Sorry, Lena, but your time is up.
And it does not prevent harmful damage to heritage. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from committee, please? No. Thank you, Lena. Can I ask the agent, Robert Gardner, please, to come up and speak?
Before I start, Chairman, I've got two colleagues from the architect and the developers who can obviously got quite a lot of questions to answer. With your permission, they're not going to speak as part of the formal presentation, but they can answer any questions. Is that okay? Thank you, Chairman and members. My name is Robert Gardner. I'm a town planner instructed by the joint applicants, which are Blockwork and Network Rail. Joined by Martin Kendall, a bit nearer, yeah. Joined by Martin Kendall from Ryder Architecture, who's designed the scheme, and Richard Thomas from Block, who is the developer. We also, I've addressed committee previously when the application was deferred, and I'd like to provide the members with an update. So the reasons for deferral were very broadly compliance with the council's local transport plan, compliance with local plan policies relating to pedestrian cycle connectivity, and then compliance with the local plan and joint core strategy policies related to the design of the car park. So they were the only matters at that point that were of concern to members. Turning first to the local transport plan, our highways consultants have written a briefing note which addresses these key issues in particular. I mean, firstly, there's no aspiration, objective or requirement in the local transport plan to deliver a joined bus and rail interchanged on one site. There is already an excellent range of frequent and reliable bus services that can be easily accessed from Blackline Hill. In fact, 17 of the total of the 32 town centre bus services stop at Blackline Hill. And the new accessible pedestrian ramp is proposed adjacent to the existing station, and that will significantly improve access between the station and the bus stops on Blackline Hill. So I confirm that the proposals comply fully with the local transport plan as confirmed by officers. Turning to pedestrian and cycle movements through the site and beyond, there are shared pedestrian cycle routes proposed through the site, which have the support of Active Travel England. They've been assessed and audited, and they are deemed to be safe and appropriate. The pedestrian and cycle crossing over St Andrews Road is a new part of the scheme, which would again significantly improve that connectivity there. The distance between the multi-storey car park and the station is about 135 metres, which is between a 1 and 2 minute walk, so well within the appropriate time distance there. So the update shows that pedestrian and cycle movements would be improved. Yeah. Okay. I'd also quickly like to reconfirm why the car park has been positioned where it is on the site. The new car park will take about 12 months to build, and this is the only position on the site that allows the current car park to remain open during the build period. So the Department of Transport won't approve the existing car park being closed until a replacement is available. The covered walkway provides a good flat route to the station, or between the station and the car park. The location of the car park is very clear for rail users when they arrive at the site. It's very clear where it is. Evidence from other stations also show that it's well within the distance to the station entrance to make it an attractive facility for rail users. Finally, I'd just like to highlight some of the benefits of the scheme. The proposals are the second phase of the regeneration of the station area. A modern and efficient transport hub would be created around the station that would encourage commuters, visitors and residents to make sustainable transport choices for their journeys. The public realm around the area would be improved significantly from what it is at the moment. This would add to its attractiveness and would increase patronage. The station would operate more efficiently with a dedicated holding area for taxis and replacement bus services. A large cycle hub would be provided, and there would be a significant increase in the number and location of accessible parking spaces. The connectivity of the site to the surrounding area would be improved significantly by the proposed crossing over St Andrews Road and the other improvements to the pedestrian route, to the bus station in particular. The residential development proposed would contribute to the council's supply of new housing, and a minimum of 35% of the units would be affordable. The hotel would create employment and would contribute to the local economy. It would also encourage visitors to utilise public and sustainable transport choices and would contribute towards modal shift. Any planning permission would be accompanied by a comprehensive planning obligations package, including significant financial contributions towards education, healthcare and public open space. And the council would be the operator of the car park and would be in full control of the use of it and would benefit from the parking income. So with all that in mind, I respectfully ask members to endorse the officer's recommendation, grant permission, and doing so pave the way for this vital regeneration project. Thank you.
So committee, your chance to ask the agents and representatives the questions from earlier. Anyone want to start? Councillor Pipes?
Can I have the site plan up, please? As I've previously mentioned, I don't believe the car park is big enough. The hotel, it's got 200 beds, is it, or something like that? 200 rooms, rather. That's going to have at least 100, including the staff, cars, because not everyone's going to turn up on push bike or by train to go to the hotel. That's just not unrealistic. The pink blob people are bound to have cars. You know, they're not all just going to be walking around. They will have cars. Some of them will. That's going to take up more spaces. Northampton itself is growing, so I can't understand why we've got a smaller car park. Could you justify that?
I can start with the with the residential, in order to have to have a permanent parking space in the car park, they would need to buy a season ticket. In order to buy a season ticket, you'd need to basically say where your address is, where you live. So that process would be run by the council. So if they saw that somebody was living in that area or in that building and was applying for a season ticket, that would be entirely in the council's gift to either issue that or not. And as part of your sort of control over it, you could make a policy of not issuing them to people that live there. Similarly with the hotel, if you decided you could not do any sort of make any arrangements with the hotel, so the hotel users would have to pay privately the same as anybody else, pay the car parking fee the same as everybody else. But obviously their use of the car park would be in reverse to commuter use. So they would be coming when commuters are going and vice versa.
Yeah, my issue is if the car park gets too full, and as I said earlier, if people turn up for a very business, well, just to work, and the car park is full because it's full of pink blob people or the hotel people, they're just not going to go to the station. They'll go to Long Butby or they'll go to Milton Keynes or Rugby. And my concern is slowly there'll be a deterioration in passengers going to Northampton Station.
Yeah.
So, over the years, we've in Network Rail's primary focus is to make sure that the access is for the rail users is available. So that the years of work in terms of the capacity that we had to provide for rail users on this car park has gone into this application. More recently, the surveys, we did a month's worth of car parking surveys to see what the use of that car park is at the moment. And that document has been submitted to the highways team to justify the level of car parking. And as I think Councillor Package said earlier, that the original application was for a larger car park. Pre-COVID, there was demand for significantly more car parking in this location, and that drove the original application, which was for a couple hundred spaces more. Over COVID, unfortunately, demand has changed, habits have changed, and we're all aware of that. And there's no justification at the moment. The highways team gave you the numbers in terms of the capacity of the current car park. There's no justification to do a bigger car park for rail users in this location than what's been proposed here. If there was, we would do it. We would be applying for that, because Network Rail, their total focus is to make sure that rail users can get onto the trains in this location. What we can add, and it's not really from a planning point of view, but Network Rail do own the land to where it says phase 3 site on the plan there. And the current intent is that is reserved. So there's a 10-year forecast that's come out of the parking demands surveys that we've done that justifies the size of the car park for what we're doing in terms of the development here. If in 10 years' time, or even before or after, the rail users need more car parking, then we will have to look at an overflow in that location and look at redesigning the routes through and the pedestrian cycle route. But that will be subject to a separate planning application at that point, and subject to demand surveys and justifying to the highways team that actually the capacity is required. So it's not a matter for consideration today. I'm just saying that that's what the process that we've been through with Network Rail to sort of come up with this proposal.
Yeah. Did you say phase 3 is the scope for extending the car park if need be?
In the future, if need be, for rail users, because it's in the control of Network Rail, and Network Rail are reserving that land for that reason. Obviously, we'd have to design the new cycle links and pedestrian links accordingly, and that would be a subject to a new planning application at that point. So you can't consider that now. I just wanted to make that point that we have considered it outside the planning process.
What was the time frame when you put in the planning permission for the car park that then had its 3 stories knocked off? Was that during COVID, or was that recent?
It was 2.5, 3 years ago.
Yeah.
So pretty. I mean, nothing had recovered post-COVID at that point. All we had was data pre-COVID, and we've been monitoring it since. We've also mentioned that the council are taking a lease on this car park once completed. So just to be clear, that's a lease to pay rent to occupy the car park for a period of time and operate it and then take the income. None of the council, the council won't be funding it. We'll be funding it as Network Rail, block work and potentially third-party finance. But they'll be operating it under the terms of that lease at that point. The business planning has had to go into that to get the council to support doing this project has been extensive. And we've had to provide the surveys that we provided to the highways team to justify the council they're taking that lease on the completed car park again. And there's no justification to go anything bigger than what's there now at the moment.
Okay, you say block work are going to be paying part or all or
we are building that car park. We will fund that car park and bring the contractor in, take all the contracting risk. Once we've completed it to the specification that we've agreed, the council then take a lease on that completed car park.
So you build the car park, someone then finances it, you walk away.
Well, Network Rail is half us, so they're not, obviously not walking away. And I'm sorry, I don't want to get into sort of too much detail around stuff that's non-planning related, but
I'm trying to just work out the risks.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to work out the risk. Is the risk to you if footfall falls for Northampton Station and Network Rail says, oh, it's all gone wrong, we're going to have to close it down. Is there any risk on yours?
I'm being told this isn't relevant to the planning application in front of us.
Yeah, it might not be, but I'm a ward councillor and
I'm happy to discuss outside this.
Yeah,
if it helps, and also bring people from Network Rail in with regards to the future, future services that are coming into Northampton and what have you. So,
yeah, my concern, which is probably nothing to do with planning, is you're on Northampton Gateway, the freight terminal, Northampton Railway Station, Longbuckby Rail Station, and Daventry International Rail Station. They're all on a branch line. And somehow we've got to get all these trains in and out of that branch line. And my concern in the future, this could be the death knell to Northampton and Longbuckby passenger services, because there's more money in freight than there is in passengers. That's my concern.
Thank you. You say, sorry, moving on, you said that you reduced the number of car park spaces 2-3 years ago. Was that when the actual assessment was done for the 52% capacity, or was that done recently?
Recently, this year. That was the latest assessment I think we provided. So we've continually been assessing it over probably a 5-year period now to try and come to a number. And as I said earlier, we would build, if we could justify it, it would have been larger, but there just isn't. That car park at the moment, as we said, is about 52% full. That's an average across 7 days, and that was a 7-day survey. It's interesting. Weekend demand's higher now than it used to be, but Mondays and Fridays there's a lot less. So and that's just the impact COVID's had on lives.
Thank you, Chair. I'm sorry. I'm a little concerned now. I was under the impression that we'd restricted the size of the car park, but you're saying you're only willing to build a car park for your rail use, while we're at the same time putting in more properties and a hotel. Is that the state of play that we're talking about?
I can take that one, Chair. When we originally came in with the application, as you say, pre-COVID, it had extra stories on there, and we removed those on the I suppose insistence is the word of the highways officers, because that would have led to a net increase in spaces, and with potential impact on the highway network in the surrounding area. Now, we didn't believe there would be that impact, but that was the reason. But I appreciate we're in a slightly counterintuitive situation, in the sense that the sort of Network Rail view of it, if you like, is that if you want to get people onto trains, you have to provide parking for them to park, so they can split their journeys between a short vehicle journey and then a longer rail. And that actually stops people or encourages people not to just do the whole journey in the car. But that's slightly counterintuitive to providing more parking. I appreciate that. That is, is a sort of dilemma, an enigma. But the reason it was reduced the reason that the number of spaces was reduced was to maintain a neutral position in terms of impact on the surrounding highway network in the town.
Thank you for that. For the builders then, silly question. Is this like a click together kit? You know, can you come and put another 3 stories on there in a couple of years' time if we decide there's a need for them?
We're looking at that. We're looking at that as an option, and then we've also got the land, the phase 3 land reserved, and that will rail have if they require for rail passengers in the future. Which, as we said earlier, there's no justification at the moment, but that is there.
Because I'm conscious how close this is and accessible to the town. So, you know, another multi-storey car park that could be useful for the council seems eminently sensible to me. But that apparently isn't your primary concern. Your primary concern is just your Network Rail passengers.
Our primary concern, Network Rail's primary concern, was to make sure there's enough capacity there for the rail passengers, which there definitely is. And then there is spare capacity at the moment, which various people have said that may be used, and the council can decide whilst they're operating that for other users on the scheme. And if that ever gets squeezed, they may expand it in the future, but you know that we can't justify that at the moment. So.
Oh, thank you for that. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Keeble.
I wanted to ask for some details on some of the sort of blanket assertions that we had. So you said that the evidence from other stations was that the distance from the car park to the station is acceptable. Could you say which stations? Because just thinking, for example, of Ipswich station, where the car park is indeed quite a walk from the station, but in between there's a taxi area, there's a drop-off area, there's bus stops, and it's completely different from this one. So you're not left walking down a long area. So there's that. The other one is that we've heard that that the current car park is the average occupancy is 52%, and that's actually that I know Councillor Pipes sort of challenged that, but that would accord pretty much with my perception of the occupancy rate, which hasn't picked up to the sort of pre-COVID rates. So I don't see how you can then argue that it wouldn't be possible to accommodate all or certainly most of the car parking that goes to the station if part of the existing car park was used for the building of the new multi-storey. I would have thought that it's a very big site, that it should be possible to accommodate the 50% usage, which is the reality now. And I'd like your comments on that. I think it's a bit sad that, you know, that the one bus area we have is for replacement buses when the train services fail. I think it's a bit of a sad statement about the state of some of the train services here. On the disabled parking bays, the disabled parking bays around the back on your plans, aren't they? And the ramp for people to get up to the front is around the is around the front of the station. So for disabled people, if they drive to the station and they want to park their cars somewhere, there's nowhere that they can actually park them and they can get step-free access up to the station because the ramp is at the front of the station. Now, which is where the hotel is. If they want to use that ramp at the front, then there is a drop-off bay, as people who use the station will have seen on Black Lion Hill. However, that is on a very fast traffic route, which comes down Weedon Road and St James Road. So I've never yet seen anybody from a wheelchair seriously try and get out of a car in that bay because there's not enough space and there's not enough time, and it's probably just not very safe. And they certainly can't park their cars there. So this would only apply to people who were being driven there and were being dropped off. And even then, they would have to manage to get out pretty nimbly to be able to use that space. So how exactly are you going to manage, seriously, how are you going to design for that? What's going to happen about people getting out and out from the front and up the ramp onto the ticketing office, or how are they going to be able to get round from the back, bearing in mind there's only one lift and that is sometimes out of order, and that has been quite a sore point actually with people with disabilities using the station. The other thing was that I asked the officers about the paragraph 413, which is the alternative routes from the station now, because it's on a loop line. You know, it's quite challenging to think about what the alternative routes be. And from, you know, historic discussions, I remember they were always much more around the routes that there might be if there was a parkway station for Northampton. So there was a station on the main line rather than on the loop line. And there's then serious discussions to be had about how all the train services work. But I wonder if you've been thinking of any other sort of loop line, any alternative routes that link up with the route line. And just on the financial contributions, I mean, I don't know if you're aware, but that part of Northampton has got a disproportionately high level of COPD and respiratory chest infections. So the issues about the air quality are actually quite important.
Yeah. Okay. If I can pick up the accessibility issues to begin with. I think notwithstanding some of the obvious failings of the current station with the steps at the front, which obviously is born out of the topography, we have, as part of the application, worked closely with an access consultant. The covered walkway, if you look at the application drawings, features a series of benches, resting spaces. So there's policy within Network Rail for those being at certain distances to meet the exemplar levels of accessibility. The lift, so there is a route from the car park to the station building, which has that provision. You mentioned other stations. The one that I've most recently looked at, because I think it was relevant for this, is Bristol Temple Meads recently has consented an MSCP multi-storey car park. That's 250 metres from the station entrance. So basically double this. I'm sure, and we probably could provide a number of others. The other one I'm relatively familiar with is Exeter St David's. That's probably over 300, maybe 330 metres from the multi-storey car park proposed for that site to the entrance of the building. So it's often the case that the parking provision is not right outside of the station building itself. So we're, as Richard said, we're well within the realms of well, I think quite a proximate location, combined with the covered walkway, which we lit and offer that route. We also have set down spaces. So the area on the opposite side of the road linked with a pedestrian crossing in the orange there is a drop off and pick up place for those who maybe aren't driving themselves, but do have mobility issues, but aren't wishing to be the north. Yeah, and I think I just want to, it's often, this station, I would suggest, doesn't have a front and a back. I mean, there are two entrances, the north entrance and the south entrance. The south entrance off of Black Lion Hill obviously is at an upper level. So once you've navigated the steps or the ramp, as we're proposing, you will be in at the ticket hall office. The lower level, we're not here to sort of reinvent the station. The station is what it is, has a lift access. I can't really comment on the maintenance arrangements, but it has got step-free access. So accessible parking at the lower level takes you into the station entrance, which is the north entrance. Lift access will take you up to the ticket hall. I mean, I say we can't fundamentally reinvent the topography of the site, but what we can do is address some of the failings of the current building.
There was a point also on the alternative routes, but just on the access. There's long been debates about which is the front and which is the back of this building. Everybody originally understood that the front was the front, which was on Black Lion Hill, and then we were told the front was actually the back, which is near car park. So I think people are quite used to that discussion. The issue is, where do people with disabilities have step-free access? And there was a problem before because the where you've got the drop-off points, which is roughly where they are now, they only give access into where the lift is, and there's only one lift, and that lift is sometimes not functioning. And so there has always been a question mark over the provision of the ramp, which is on the Black Lion Hill entrance. And the issue is, how do people get out of a vehicle on that hill, even though there's a lay-by, it's a challenging lay-by. How do they get out of there to use a ramp at the front? And that is an issue. I mean, I'll have a look at the layout of Bristol Temple Meads, but from knowledge, Bristol is a city which has incredibly good sort of and well thought out access routes and walkways and such like. And I'll have a look, but I would guess that Bristol has thought out very carefully about how people are going to get to and from the station. And I think that, I mean, that's just an observation. The point about the disabled access is a major one, because that has always been a running sore with people using the station.
Thank you. Having lived in Bristol for many years, practically Bristol born, it does have an infrastructure of cycle connectivity. In this instance, the walkway from the new MSCP is no different. It's a walkway that takes you from a car park to the station. The bus station in Bristol, if you know Bristol, is on the opposite side of the city centre. So there isn't an intermodal connectivity there. There are bus stops on Temple Way outside of the station, but again, no closer or more extensive than those on Black Lion Hill in proportionate terms. So I think, some of the, Bristol is often held up as an exemplar of sustainable networks, and for a city full of hills with cyclists and pedestrians, that's quite an achievement. But I think we sought to resolve, and I think some of the issues also that we're not touched on today is that the station is a busy operational site as well. So in the development of the design, it's not just the movement of passengers, but we've also had to consider the train operating companies' requirements for service deliveries and operational maintenance throughout the course of their working day and week, the requirements of the emergency vehicles as well. Motorcycle users have been catered for. So a lot of the parking and locational arrangements have been driven by discussions with the operating company, who in truth have the best day-to-day understanding of what does work and what doesn't work. But I do take your point about the lift, and having designed a bridge to eradicate lift access in lieu of a step-free access, I completely agree that you should not rely on a lift if at all possible. But as I say, unfortunately, in this instance, we are dealing with the building as it currently stands, and so what we're trying to do is mitigate rather than completely reinvent.
There were the other points as well.
Can you just remind?
Which was the main one was about the extra routes under 413, which I was asked to ask you about. The officers said it was down for yourselves to answer.
Was that the air quality related point?
No, it was about the alternative, the extra routes, the extra train routes.
We don't have the full list of additional routes and that have been proposed, but we can make that available post committee and put you in touch with the right people I know well. But we've been told this happening. West Midlands trains are involved, but again, I haven't got that information, unfortunately.
Well, we're supposed to make the decision today.
Well, I think the planning application, all the evidence that has been presented in the way that the officers have determined it is on have assessed it is on existing levels of service. I mean, there was a point about the possibility of the station, suggestion of the station closing. Well, I mean, I've never seen a mainline town station close in my lifetime. I think that's, I mean, we just don't have the data, but it seems highly unlikely. And let's say that the premise of the application is on the current routes and the current service.
And the other point was about the capacity and whether the car park as used at existing capacity, not at projected full capacity, whether that number of cars could be provided for on the site if the car park was built closer to the station and not at the other end of it.
It's difficult because the average, the 52% is the average. So today, for example, it's probably nearer, 65%. The top deck is about half full. So on certain days of the week, there are more cars there. So we can't really fit this any further closer to the car to the station with that existing structure there. No, we just can't make it work. So.
Can you give us assurances that this car park will be able to be constructed in a way where extra capacity may be added in the future if needed?
Yes, and that's also in the legal documents. Okay, it's separate, it's not a planning issue, but the land to the rear of phase 3 land has been reserved for that reason.
So, Chairman, was your question related to adding stories onto the existing or providing extra provision elsewhere?
Adding stories onto the car park that we're looking at today.
I can't say we'll do the structure will be that form yet, but if it's not, we can go to the phase 3 land anyway and get additional car park in there. So.
Councillor Humphreys, please.
Thank you. The second member of the public who spoke made reference to the 21 metres between the car park and the flats, that provisional distance space. Can you just tell us what the sort of the minimum is for building regulations or whatever between a 6-storey building and a 3-storey building? Thank you.
I think from a building regulations point of view, I wouldn't suggest there is a minimum. Again, based on following medieval street patterns in the last 5 years, we deliver housing that's probably 4 metres from one building to another. I mean, it's not a very common situation, but it was fully building regulation compliant, occupied in part by a housing association. So it's often, particularly when you're optimizing urban development sites, those distances. I think my understanding is the 19 to 21 meters historically has been born out of protection of amenity rather than air quality. And obviously, it is one of the challenges of urban living. Urban living, by definition, you are in proximity to maybe sort of pollution levels that a rural location or greenfield location wouldn't have. But that is the direction of, no pun intended, travel that we're taking these days. We're trying to encourage people to live in cities. We're trying to encourage them to live next to rail stations in urban areas and regenerate our town centres and our city centres. And so I'm very comfortable that the distance is 21 metres. I think one of the benefits of the reduction in height of the multi-storey car park is the feeling of overbearing and possibly daylight. And daylight is often the biggest factor that a development will be facing rather than the air quality. But we've had the air quality assessment carried out, and the air quality consultant is obviously looking at the proximity of residential in the future, as well as the air quality on the site as it currently stands today. So in summary, completely confident that, well, both in terms of statutory, but also in terms of evidential sort of examples that we could offer, that the development will be in keeping with many other locations of a comparable nature.
Thank you. Just to clarify that the differences in height, there's no different statutory requirement when you've got a 6-story building and a 3-story building. Thank you.
Sorry, is there a particular element that you're driving at?
The car park will be 6 stories.
Yes.
And the flats 3 stories, or is it?
I think they're
Oh, perhaps it's
five. Yeah,
Okay.
five
Yeah.
stories. I mean, the
Sorry.
massing appears slightly higher because obviously the floor to floor on a residential building is slightly different than a multi-story car park.
Councillor Furman, please.
Thank you. Could I please ask, I saw earlier a proposed future cycle and pedestrian way. Just for consideration, are you talking about taking away Castle Yard car park for the ballast hole? And also, has consideration been given to vehicle movement that has to come into the Castle Yard ballast hole? Thank you.
Are you referring to the land that's noted as phase 3? Is that the space that you're talking about there on the plan that's on the screen?
Actually, country end or north end of the car park.
The north end of the car park.
Yes.
So that, as Richard said, that's Network Rail controlled land, and obviously in the future, there's aspirations potentially to look at that as an expansion of some of the ideas on this site. And we've talked a lot today about the MSCP, the car parking provision, but there's obviously an ability to potentially expand residential on that land as well. And I think one of the things we're trying to do with the supplementary briefing note was to show that a development coming forward on that plot of land could, around the boundary of the site, probably through a nature corridor adjacent to the riverbank, make a better connectivity with the Spencer Bridge Road crossroad and actually avoid pedestrians and cyclists needing. I mean, they have the option, as we said, given an option, they have the option of following St Andrews Road, but this could be an alternative, probably a more attractive route through to the north, and also permeate through into that land as well. So provide connections in there for residents as well. And I think, again, the route past the current MSCP, in the future, that wouldn't just have development on one side, it would have development on both sides. And by definition, then natural surveillance and the like will be taking place. And be assured that none of these routes would be unlit. None would be without, I believe, CCTV as well. So it's clearly in the interest of everyone who's managing that site to make them as safe as possible.
Okay, committee, do we have any other questions? Nope. Thank you, guys. Officers, any points you want to come back on?
If I can just come back on the air quality element that concerns have been raised about environmental health have kind of raised no concerns. The residential element will be subject to reserve matters approval where we have the detail of that, and environmental health will be consulted again at that stage, and would look for appropriate mitigation as necessary in terms of any air quality or noise impacts.
Okay, committee, can we debate this application, please? Anyone want to start?
I'd just like to point out again what I said earlier on about the lack of cycling infrastructure to and from. There's an opportunity there to deliver safer routes through to the station, and I don't know if that's part of this application just for this phase now or a bigger picture to it. It's so that's my point on the cycling routes more than anything, and walking routes. That's where I see any problem. Parking, it is what it is. It always has been the same. Obviously, you're going to introduce more flats. How you're going to control that, that's down to the council, and whether you take parking spaces away from commuters, how, you know, and likewise how that will react, come into the thing. The hotel, I'm guessing people will probably come in from the train to use the hotel, do the business and commute out via train. So again, parking is not really a massive, but.
Councillor Bicknell.
Yes, Chair, I agree with Councillor Gaskell. My only concern is safer cycling routes and access to the town, but that sits outside this red. I know it's part of the thing, but as far as I'm concerned, the application for me, I'm happy to support the application and we'll propose it if necessary.
Councillor Pipes.
I still have my reservations about this car park size. I just don't think it's big enough. In the years ahead, when phase 3 comes up for whatever it's going to happen to it, is that going to be to strategic planning or non-strategic because of the size of it? Do we?
I think the site's bigger, so it'll probably come back to us.
It'll come back to us. No, I just have reservations on the size of the car park. I can't see how this is going to work. And the concern I have is in the years, if it does go wrong and they do shut the place down, and the officers will be blamed because they didn't allow the extra 3 levels on top, which would be unfair. And then we voted it through and it'll be on our heads then, having listened to all of this. So I shall vote against or abstain.
Sorry, Councillor Keeble, please. Did you indicate you wanted to talk? You've got Councillor Cartwright, please.
Okay, thank you, Chair. I know we're dealing with this application, but you got to look at the site as a whole, and there's going to be bigger expansion in this supposed so-called phase 3 area. The bigger car park now, rather than trying to build a second car park later, it makes much more sense. And even if everything goes the way it may or may not go, will be irrelevant then. We'd have a car park that we could make use of a decent size. I know there are various ways to do it, but for residential permits can be different to, train user permits or whatever they're doing. So I just feel it seems a big push to do nothing new.
Through you, Chair, just to remind you, the application is the red line plan before you this evening, and you may or may not have concerns, but the issue before members this evening is the red line plan and the description of the application that is before you today for the car park and for the outline for the hotel and the flats. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. In that case, let me lean towards saying as a final amendment, I don't think it's big enough. It's not forward thinking, and it's not enough. I would be leaning the other way on that. Sorry, over to Councillor Keeble.
Councillor Keeble.
Yes, I think my concern is that we're being asked for full consent for phase 1, which is the car park, and most of the discussion has been about that. And then also outline consent for phase 2. And I mean, I understand the discussion about the car park. I'm concerned, but I'm concerned also that we don't have enough, there's very scanty information about a very major housing development as well, which is the block of flats, and then also obviously the hotel development. In the plans, and there's been scanty discussion, there's not been very much discussion about that, there's not been very much detail about that, including about who would live there. We've been told roughly the amount that would be affordable and social and so on. There's a whole lot of issues that we haven't been told about in relation to that you would expect for a substantial housing application, which is about more information about the road access, traffic management. There's uncertainty about what the parking arrangements would be. I know it's meant to be no vehicle, but I think that's a bit of wishful thinking, maybe. And there's not been much discussion about the impact on the amenities of the area, but actually looking at those pictures that we were shown right at the outset of what people would see. I mean, for those people in the flats, the flat retaining wall next to the station would take out the view from about the first 2 or 3 floors of the flats. But also the impact of the entire site development on the amenities of the surrounding area are very substantial indeed. I mean, I take the point that Greyfriars is all to be developed, but we aren't considering that now. We're considering this application in the current context, and I'm not convinced about. I've yet to hear persuasive arguments about some of those issues.
Yes, thank you, Chair. We seem to have spent 2 hours redesigning what's in front of us. We either want what we got in front of us, we don't want what we got in front of us. We're not here to design this, redesign it. We're not the experts. We have an application for us with specific boundaries. Can we just not get on with what we've got as opposed to trying to spend our whole time going round and round in circles, please?
Sorry, we're just going to defer for 5 minutes just so we can have some conversations. Thank you.
So, Chair? Chair, does this mean we're allowed to leave the room or not? No, okay.
Okay, committee, we're back in session now. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Sorry, the reason we needed to just speak to the applicant is because we've come up with a theoretical suggestion. So what we've come up with, as has been explained in the debate, phase 3 is within the blue line, so it's within the applicant's control. So everything outside of the red line, whilst we are, Councillor Bignell's absolutely right, we're dealing with the planning application within the red line. Yeah, sorry, we're dealing with the planning application within the red line. But one suggestion which you could consider is you grant permission with a Section 106 agreement. The Section 106 agreement covenants part of the blue line, an area there that could be used as an overspill car park. It prevents the developer from building on that land until the completion of this development. And if upon completion of the residential development, if that car-free concept has not been delivered and there's more demand for more car parking, you have a review mechanism in the Section 106 that then requires the applicant to deliver overspill car parking within that area that's been reserved. So that's the suggestion. And we've just discussed that with highway colleagues and with the applicant.
Councillor Keeble.
Thank you. That deals with the issue about the size of the car park. What it doesn't deal with is issues about the block of flats and the amenity and the other issues, bearing in mind that we'd be giving planning permission here that would lock us into the car park. And everybody agrees there needs to be a car park. It's just about the size and the location of it. But the flats and the hotel as well. And I don't hear a solution that deals with those issues.
So the reserve matters for the detail of the residential and the detail of the hotel. Officers would be required at that stage so we're just looking at establishing a principle of a residential development and a hotel on those sites. We haven't got that specific detail, but as part of the assessment of those reserve matters, we would be looking at amenity for both the hotel and the residential blocks as part of that, and the detailed layout and how the units connect with the wider area and within the site itself. So that would be something that we would have to assess as part of that reserve matters.
Chair, I think that the sort of missing bits around the station and the hotel, around the flats and the hotel, that's more than detail. That is major issues around what actually fills those very key sites. That's it seems to be.
Yeah, I think some of that it's going to be the next stage, isn't it? So it will be filled out in the next part, and then we can decide then if it's acceptable or not. Councillor Purser.
Thank you, Chair. Based on the issues we deferred the application on, which were kind of the links and the access within the site, we can only deal with it as far as this application is concerned. We can only consider really within the red line. I'm still not convinced that some of the things outside the red line are sorted to my satisfaction, but I think that's a different issue and has to be resolved in a different place to here. So, and I kind of have some concerns about, just the process in terms of the hybrid applications, because they are so much of the impact on this site. But again, we only can deal with the application as it is before us. So my view is that given the assurances about parking, which I think, I think the future will determine that really, and then, the commercial requirements, I'm sure, would determine how that is resolved. But my thought is that we actually, certainly from my point of view, the issue about links and accesses has been, we have moved forward significantly in terms of from the last meeting to this meeting. I think I would now be in a position to support this application, despite all my reservations.
Sorry, Councillor Humphreys first, please.
So I was just following up from what Nikki was saying to members. In the planning policy response, they highlighted concerns with the role of the public realm and improvement in the sense of arrival, that those issues would be fully assessed in the reserve matters should it be granted today for future determination of phase 2 and phase 2A.
Yeah, I mean, there's an element of public realm that's for determination kind of along the pedestrian walkway routes, but in terms of the sense of arrival, some of that, particularly towards the front of the station, that the detail and design of the hotel element is going to certainly be key in terms of the sense of arrival at the station at that point. And similarly, we've got some, although we've got some landscaping already proposed and for agreement as part of this application, the residential element, there'll be additional kind of public realm around that and the detailed design of that. So there is more to come and more information to come, but yeah, and that will be controlled at reserve matters stage and assessed and controlled at reserve matters stage.
Councillor Cartwright, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I appreciate that all the details will come out in the wash for the flats and that, but I'm struck by, if we have a lack of ambition on this car park now, we're going to be flooding the surrounding streets, which are pressed sorely as it is with vehicles at a later date. So I just don't think that's ambitious enough for our town, and I'm leaning against it. I haven't heard anything persuasive to say that this is a good idea to, you know, make all this effort to stand still, go nowhere.
So we have conditions, as you've heard, we can condition parts of phase 3, is that not? Okay,
No, sorry, Chair. No, that doesn't concern me. They want to use that for something else clearly, but that's again, it's outside the remit here. I understand they want to do that. If they're more ambitious with this car park now, that's a beacon for our town. I think that would be better than hopefully put an extra few places on a bit of flat ground later before they do something else with it. So no.
Sorry, Councillor Bignell, please.
Yes, during all these lengthy discussions this afternoon, I've yet to hear one policy from any member that this actually contravenes. Since decisions are policy based, and certainly the defence that if it goes beyond this point, are policy based, I don't understand how we can possibly refuse this application. There's lots of wants and that, and lovely lists of what could be nice and the trees could be greener, but let's have some policies it's against, or let's get on with it.
Councillor Humphreys.
I was just going to ask, as regards Councillor Cartwright's statement, I'm not sure what he's basing his supposition that the car park's going to be flooded. We know at the moment that it's 52%, sorry, 65 today, 50, 60, whatever. You know, there's a shift towards different getting out of the car, and we've got this suggestion with 106 and phase 3. So I think we should really rely on the professional assessments, Network Rail's forecasts, etc., rather than some catastrophizing as to the car park may or may not be sufficient. Thank you.
Thank you. In response to that, yeah, that's just observational. When I drive past the station car park, it always looks pretty full to me. Certainly, definitely more than 50%.
Councillor Bignell.
Yes, I propose we accept the officer's recommendations, given the changes that Simon Ellis and the developers have agreed.
Okay, do we have a seconder for,
Talking. No, but
okay, well, we have a seconder for this proposal, so if it fails, then we can carry on. Is it? Okay, councillor Pipes, I'll give you one more chance to put your case forward and then we'll move to the vote.
okay, like I said before, I wasn't convinced about the size of the car park. The waste ground extension to the car park isn't satisfactory. However, is there a way we can defer it so they can increase the size of the proper car park onto phase 3 solely for to see the plans for the car park itself?
Okay, so if the proposal we have on the table fails, then we can see if your proposal has any traction, councillor Pipes. But as I understand it, to add more floors to the car park, it'd have to be a deferral for it to come back to committee again.
Sorry. Not more floors, just stretch the car park out onto phase 3.
Yeah, I think that would have to come back as well. It's exactly the same. It'd have to come back again to committee, so it'd have to be a deferral. And then, yeah, if they, okay, so we have a proposal to accept the officers' recommendations with the amendments from the officers. Councillor Purser has seconded. Yes, so we move to the vote. So all to accept. Against? Abstain? Okay, so councillor Bignell's proposal to accept this proposal with the amendments has carried. Thank you. We will take a 10-minute break because I think that went on a bit longer than we were expecting. Okay, thank you, committee. Back in session. Item 6, 2025/3130/MAR, Toaster Vale Phase 1, London Road, Toaster. I'll now hand over to the case officer, Dan Callis, to begin the presentation.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So yes, item 6 is an application for reserve matters for 155 dwellings as part of the ongoing Toaster South urban extension development. Apologies, everyone. The application is for all reserve matters within the area lined in red. There are 2 public rights of way which cross the site, and these will formally be diverted as part of a Section 257 application following the grant of reserve matters approval. So just looking at where we are within the wider site, the application that we're looking at today is in this area here. So it's everything pretty much to the west of this retained hedge line, existing hedge line, and to the north of this section of hedge line. And then there's also an area, some of this area of strategic open space within here. So it's all this part of the site. Just to run through some photographs quickly, this is a view into the site from Rowan Close. So this is the existing edge of Toaster looking sort of west into the site. You can see on the right-hand side, there's a pathway going through, and that connects with the public right-of-way, which runs perpendicular to that along the backs of these properties, and the site is beyond. This is the public right-of-way. This is SB 21, which is a bridleway running up the northeastern boundary of the site along the backs of the existing houses. A view of the backs of some of those houses. So yeah, this is on the western boundary of the site. A lot of the taller vegetation that you see there, the trees, will be retained as part of the development. A lot of the lower stuff, the brambles, etc., will be removed. But where possible, the trees will be retained in order to help provide screening between existing and proposed dwellings. And a view in the other direction, again, just giving an impression as to that existing relationship. And then a view from sort of within the site looking north, so continuation of that existing boundary on the edge of the town, and how the site gently slopes northwards towards the brook, which you can make out in the middle ground, sort of the tree line here. And then beyond that, you can just about make out the A43 and the street lights that are along that route. This is more within the middle of the site, looking back across. And again, you can see that very gentle fall from right to left. So that's from south to north, essentially. And then a view from that same position, looking more northwest. This is looking towards the A43, which is on the opposite side of the valley there. And then you have the beginning of the new relief road that comes in across the brook to the new roundabout here, and then continues off to the left and round the town. And then this is, I think this is the last photo, it's the existing suds basin that's been provided. This isn't wholly complete, and the reason why it's full of water is because the plumbing, etc., that goes with that is not yet fully installed, but it gives you an impression as to the scale of the basin, and that will be finalised as part of the development once reserve matters are approved. sorry, and then this is another looking along part of the existing hedgerow and some of the trees, and they will be retained as part of the proposals. So the proposed site layout, it includes the dwellings, associated areas of public open space, including revised scheme for part of Silverstone Brook Park. So that's, you can see the red line hopefully here continuing up round Ucks, just off the top of the screen there, and comes back down. So this part has previously been approved, but there's a slightly revised scheme, which is in part to include the sewer pumping station here, partly to ensure that the development appropriately addresses the adjoining dwellings that are now proposed in these areas, and some further minor tweaks to the layout of this just to improve it. The proposed dwellings are a mix of 1, 2, 3 and 4 bed. There's also a local green with play area in this location here. So the play area is in this portion, and then we've got the retained hedge along here with the trees that we saw in the photo. Just to give some further context, to the south of the site, we have the area that's proposed for employment. So there is a strip of buffer planting along here, which will help provide that separation between the residential and the employment parts of the site. And then the area that we have here is the secondary local centre. So a small number of retail units essentially that will be provided in this location in due course in a future application. As I said, there's the retained hedge here, and then the other retained hedge running diagonally up this side of the site. The proposal also includes the spine road. So that's coming off the roundabout that we saw in the photos, round, down, and then that continues through to connect to an existing section of spine road to the south that we have already approved. So that will complete the spine road and provide that connection going through. And then in the future, we will have reserved matters applications for these remaining parcels to the south. In terms of amenity, there's no unacceptable impact on existing neighbours to the north. So that's set out in the report, but the key areas really are where we've got the back-to-back along this section here. But as I said before, the intention is to retain as much of that vegetation as possible, which will assist with minimising any change. In terms of affordable housing, we have 17 units, so that equates to 11%, which is slightly above the 10% requirement set out in the outline permission. The amount of affordable across the wider SUE will even itself out. So we've had some parcels with a bit more, some with a bit less, but that does even out across the overall development. The affordable is a mixture of 1, 2, 3 bedroom dwellings, and it does include a bungalow, and it's set out in the 2 clusters that you can see coloured on the plan. In terms of the proposed house types, well, essentially what we have is the same house types as we've approved a number of times on previous parcels, and there's quite a wide variety of different house types that include terraces, detached, semi-detached, etc. And then in terms of materials, again, the palette is the same as has been approved numerous times, predominantly mixture of red and orange brick. There are 3 stone units on this parcel in accordance with the requirements of the section 106. So they're the yellow ones you can see prominent. We've deliberately put those in prominent positions here, here, and here to maximise the exposure of those. And then the plan we have here just gives you an overall context for the design of the wider Silverstone Brook Park, which contains a variety of different uses and habitats and finishes in terms of some areas of planting, some avenues. There's a pond, there's retention of existing grassland where that's appropriate, and there's areas of informal kickabout pitches. So essentially amenity areas where recreation can occur. In terms of updates, there are no updates on this item. The recommendation is that consent be granted subject to the conditions outlined in the report and the update, with delegated authority to officers to amend those conditions as necessary. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Dan. Any questions from committee, please? Councillor Humphreys?
Thank you, Dan. I appreciate this isn't a question directly related to the application in front of us, but you're mentioning the screening between the local play area and the employment site. There's not going to be B8 there, is there?
So the outline consent does stipulate set maximum floor areas for employment, which does include some B8. It's limited, but in terms of the amounts, it's not expected that B8 will be in the form of large distribution sheds. It's more smaller scale, and that's partly also dictated by the constraints of the site in terms of topography and access and retained hedges and that sort of thing that need to be accounted for. So yeah, we're not going to be looking at a big bulky, really tall shed on this site.
No other questions? Committee? Okay, we have no public speakers, so Councillor Bignell, kick off the debate, please.
Yeah, I propose we accept the officer's recommendation as written out in the report here, and thank you.
So second, Councillor Pipes. Okay, before we move to the vote, is there anyone who wants to add anything to this debate before we vote on it? No, okay, so we have a proposal by Councillor Bignell, seconded by Councillor Pipes to accept the officer's recommendation. We move on to the votes. All for? Okay, one abstention. Okay, so the proposal is carried. Thank you. Okay, so item 7, 2025/3738/MAF, plot 6, Northampton Gateway Rail Freight Interchange, Northampton. I'll now hand over to the case officer, Nikki Scaife, to begin the presentation.
Thank you, Chair. So this is the application site outlined in red here. The blue outline shows the extent of the wider rail freight site, which was it's subject to a development consent order. It was considered as a nationally significant infrastructure project considered by the Secretary of State and granted consent in October 2019. Just an aerial view of the site. Sorry, slightly different orientation, but you have the M1 along the boundary there and the A508, you've got junction 15. And then A508 here, access to the site, there's existing infrastructure, so access to the main site is via a new roundabout here. You've got Collingtree Village to the north, Grange Park there, and then that's Milton Mulser just there. So this is the approved parameters plan. This is approved under the development consent order. This sets out the pink areas, set out the zones for development. You've got the blue area there, which is the rail freight interchange that's constructed and up and running at present. And then you've got the green areas of strategic landscaping around the site. So plot 6 that we're looking at now, apologies, I've got the wrong glasses on, but it's in this zone here. So this plan here is, this was submitted again as part of the DCO. It was an indicative master plan setting out how the site could potentially come forward. This is a slightly more up-to-date plan of the wider site, and this shows consented plots. So you've got plot 7 here, which is consented and in practically completed on site at the moment. That's the Amazon building. You've got plot 4 here, which is use and logistics. Again, that's nearing completion on site. There's a consent granted for plot 3 here. Another consent granted for plot 5, and then this is plot 6 that we're looking at here. So this is just the floor plan for plot 6. It's a B8 warehouse with ancillary office use internally. You've got offices here and some hub offices there. Loading bays and HGV parking either side there, and then you've got visitor and staff car parking there, and then access to the site. You've got a car park access and then a gate controlled HGV access there. In terms of HGV parking bays, you've got 186 spaces in total with 110 loading dock bays. The car park is 560 spaces, so that exceeds the requirement of 559. 10% of those spaces would be accessible directly in front of the entrance to the building, and there's 10% EV charging spaces as well. And there's 28 car parking spaces that are allocated for car share to accord with the travel plan for the wider site. There's also 135 cycle spaces located just there. There's walking and cycling links to the wider area throughout the site. Just not sure whether that plan probably shows it. There is a diverted footpath, but there's a wider kind of route around the site for walking and cycling links to the wider area. There's also been improvements along the A508 in terms of pedestrian and cycle route along there. There's also existing crossing that's been put in as part of this development and bus stops located just off the roundabout there. And as part of this development, there'll be a bus stop provided along the internal estate roads. So that's just in details of the offices. In terms of elevation, that's the northwest elevation, and you can see the office part of the development here. In terms of colouring and design, it follows a similar form to plot 4 and plot 7, which we'll see in some photos, and it's typical really of the SEGRO design that's coming forward on the site. And that's the loading dock bay elevations, and then that would be the elevation that faces towards the A508. And just some images and floor plan for the gatehouse at the entrance to the car park and HGV access. So these are just photos of the existing site. So this is taken from the A508. You can see plot 4 in the distance there. Plot 6 would sit to the front of that, just round about here. This again is a view from the A508 just off the roundabout and the main entrance into the site, and you can see plot 7 there. Apologies, that's plot 4. That's actually within the site. So this is on the internal estate roads looking to plot 4. So plot 6 would sit just off to your left-hand side there. So this is looking at the entrance to the site. You can just about see the crossing there, and that's looking towards plot 7, the Amazon building, and plot 6 would be off to the right. This is on the internal estate road, so this is the plateau for plot 6. Again, you can see the Amazon building in the distance there. And just some CGIs of the site. In terms of, there's no technical consultee objections. Collingtree Parish Council raised some concerns about air quality, noise impacts and additional vehicles going through the site. I did contact Environmental Health and Highways to see if they'd had any concerns raised. Environmental Health have been doing ongoing monitoring in respect of air quality in Collingtree, and that is due to carry on. That section of the M1 was an air quality management area adjacent to the site. That's no longer the case, but there continues to be air quality management ongoing. In terms of noise, there are significant bunds approved as part of the overall DCO. They're in an advanced state now, and part of the purpose of those was to mitigate noise to the wider area. The majority of those bunds are in place, and there's landscaping proposed to go in, and some of those additional bunds as well imminently. In terms of vehicle movements through Collingtree Village, there is an approved construction management plan as part of the DCO. The construction routes aren't to go through Collingtree Village, and there's a condition proposed for plot 6 as well that would seek for this development to accord with the overall DCO development construction management plan. Highways have had no specific concerns. It should be noticed that there is other development going on within Collingtree Village which might have vehicles. There's the Vistry development which might have associated vehicles at times having to go through the village, but nothing to indicate that there's any HGVs arising from this development that have been going through the village. Officer recommendation is for approval. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Bignell.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I see the building is going to be designed to BREEAM excellent standards, which is very, very good. But it goes on to say that allowance for space provided for future voltaic panels subject to occupier strategy. I get sick and tired of all my residents saying to me, you put another big shed up, there's nothing on the roof, why aren't you? I mean, is there anything we can do to, we don't know the occupier is necessarily, or can we not force them to do anything? Is there anything we can actually do nowadays? I understand the difficulties in doing it, but can we not do something about it?
So there are some EV panels proposed on the roof. There's a lot of roof lights. Sorry?
It was on the gatehouse, wasn't it?
No, apologies. I haven't got the roof plan, but there are EV charging panels proposed on the roof, not for the entire extent, because there's a lot of roof lights proposed on there.
12%.
But there is the opportunity for the occupier to provide additional EV
so the roof could
panels if
so the roof can sustain them.
That,
it's down
yeah.
to the occupiers'
Yes.
willingness to join in.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Chair. I wanted to just check about the bus services. I see there's bus stops and so on. There's obviously bus services also on the main road. I just, I wondered what the obligations, because there's also supposed to be a travel plan as well. What's being provided by way of getting people from this site into like the town centre, because those are, I presume some will be working quite sort of antisocial shifts.
Yeah, so there is, as part of the DCO, so the bus stops have been installed on the A508, and as the development throughout the internal development comes forward and each plot comes forward, there'll be further bus stops provided on the internal estate roads. There is, and I'm just trying to remember the name of them, Sustainable Transport Working Group. So there is a group specifically set up effectively to increase the bus service as the development gets built out. The bus service will increase, so it's responding to the need as it comes forward on site. So there are officers of the council that are continually liaising with transport consultants with SEGRO to bring forward an increased bus service as the site gets developed out.
Thank you, that's helpful. I mean, I'm really conscious there's Grange Park as well, just across the way that's got a lot of warehousing, but it's not a decision for here, but elsewhere about buses that go around the orbital routes and pick up all those workplaces. Perhaps we could have a conversation elsewhere about that. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm just the touch on that. It's the shift pattern times. Will there be an actual bus on the bus route? Because I've got bus shelters that have been in place on our streets and there haven't been a bus route for 6 years. So will there actually be a bus route to pick up these shift workers, or is it sort of expecting what usually happens is the agencies do it?
So it's kind of been evolving. That's part of the remit of the working group. Effectively, it's kind of responding to that ongoing need. So it's kind of getting the balance of providing that initial service and then increasing that and the capacity of the bus service as the site gets developed out.
Chair, I think the reason this is coming to us is because of the additional height on the warehouse. Could you just sort of spell that out to us, just so that we just understand what we're agreeing to?
Yeah, apologies, Councillor Purser, I missed that key element of my presentation. So the reason, ordinarily, the Development Consent Order acts is effectively an outline consent, and ordinarily, as the plots come forward, the applicant agent would submit what we call requirements, details of requirements. Effectively, they equate effectively to a reserved matters application. The reason Plot 6 has come forward as a full planning application, which we've had for Plot 7 and Plot 4 previously, they want to increase the height of the proposed building by 1 metre above the parameters set by the Development Consent Order. So that parameter plan that I showed you sets height, maximum height limits and maximum floor space limits for each development zone. So they're wanting to increase the height of the building by 1 metre and then the floor space by just over 12,000 metres above what the DCO parameters permit. Highways, in conjunction with that, because the DCO parameters also allow for, they're given allowance for the overall site for mezzanine floor space, and that's all been taken into account in terms of the transport assessment when the site was originally assessed. So as part of the mitigation, if you like, for this increased floor space for Plot 6, the applicants have submitted a draft Section 106 agreement that proposes to reduce the take-off an equal quantum of mezzanine floor space for the entire site, effectively levelling out the floor space. I think in addition, Plots 4, Plot 7 and Plot 5 have all got consent, and as I say, Plot 4 and Plot 7 are built out. The floor space for those units are well below what the parameters indicated. So for the site overall, in terms of development, it's still below the overall quantum of floor space. Hence, there's no increased vehicle movements as a result of increased floor space, and that's the approach. Highways are satisfied with that approach as well.
Being as the height of the building is measured as a reference level, why don't they just cut it in 1 metre? Why build and go up 1 metre when they could just go below by cutting in?
Pass. I mean, there are a lot of the development plateaus. Yeah. I mean, a lot of the development plateaus are there already. I mean, the Amazon building is considerably higher. I think that's 25, just over 25 metres to the parapet. So, and Plot 4 that sits behind it is a similar height to what they're proposing for Plot 6. So, in terms of visual impact and kind of what we've allowed and what's on the ground now, it's negligible difference in terms of visual impact.
Because at the end of the day, you know, from a distance, 1 metre either way, isn't it?
Yeah.
You can't spot it really,
Yeah.
can you?
I move that we approve the officer's recommendations.
Not, not quite. We're still asking questions of Nikki here. So if everyone's done asking Nikki questions, then we can move on. But if we have a few more, then.
Collingtree Parish Council are concerned about the increase in HGV movements through the village. I can't see how this is going to be a problem myself. I just want to make sure that it isn't actually a problem, unless it's because they're concerned HGVs go the wrong way.
Yeah, I think I said at the beginning of the presentation, there is other development. There's no reason for the vehicles to route through Collingtree Village in reality, and the approved construction management plan for the wider development doesn't direct them that way. There's a big residential development going on in Collingtree Village. I don't know the construction routes off the top of my head, but that may cause some HGVs to have to go through the village as a result of that. But in terms of this development, there's no reason for vehicles to go through.
When we had a site visit, probably about a year ago, whatever, there's actually a railway line to bring construction materials in, isn't there? Is that being utilised to reduce the number of lorries on the road?
The actual, I'm not aware that the rail freight's actually been used in terms of construction. It is being used for, I'm aware that it's been used for some sites in Brackmills, and I think there's intention for certainly plot 4 use and logistics have expressed an interest. The actual DCO itself doesn't require any of the units on site specifically to use it. It's controlled more by marketing and Segro pushing that.
But when Segro took us around the tour, they highlighted this railway line down there, which enabled large bulky material to be brought on site without using lorries. And I thought, what a smashing idea. But
yeah, it does provide the ability to do that. There's nothing to force them to take that, but you're right. It would make sense. Yeah.
Any other questions for Nikki? Okay, so we'll open the debates for this application, if anyone wants to start.
Do you want me to move the recommendation, Chair, which is that we accept the officer's recommendations?
Okay, so we have a proposal from Councillor Keeble to accept the proposal. We have a seconder in Councillor Cartwright. I'll give you one chance here to make any more representations before we move to the vote. Okay, so all 4. Okay, 1 abstention. So Councillor Keeble's proposal has carried. Thank you very much. There is nothing else to add under urgent business, so I'll now close the meeting at 17:04. Thank you very much, everyone. And Merry Christmas.